Hey everyone, if you are just joining, it is my pleasure to introduce you to our esteemed guest today here at Opus on our Fireside Chat series. My name is Rachael Nemeth. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Opus Training. And today we're going to be talking about artificial intelligence, AI, in learning and development, but also in the broader context of the service industry. I have Gregg Majewski with me. He's the CEO of Craveworthy Brands. Before I let him introduce himself, I just want to set context a little bit. For those of you listening live, um, it's clear that we're officially in an era where AI is no longer just a buzzword. It's really shaping the service industry in pretty interesting ways. And restaurants in particular are at a crossroads between tradition and innovation. We're seeing it at Opus, lots of decisions around which direction you need to head. And a lot of leaders don't really understand that yet as much as Gregg does. Gregg is going to provide some real world perspective for us. So excited to sit down with you, largely because he's actually putting these tools to work at his restaurants. He brings lots of experience building those brands. And we're going to tackle questions that I know a lot of you are probably thinking about, a lot of the things we are thinking about, which is, where does AI actually make sense in my operation? How do we make sure that we're using it responsibly? And what do we actually need to put in place before we go all in? So excited to have you all here. If you have any questions, feel welcome to throw them in the chat. We will have a live Q&A with Gregg in about 28 minutes here, though, so feel free to keep them in your head so you can ask him directly. But Gregg, I'm going to toss it to you. If you could just give the world your introduction. Who are you? And tell us about Craveworthy Brands. It's such a unique business model.
I'm Gregg Majewski. I am now CEO and founder of a company called Craveworthy Brands, which is at this time the fastest growing restaurant company in the United States, mostly through acquisitions and stuff over the last 2 years. 2 years ago, there was zero of everything. At the end of this year, will be 225 open restaurants, 500 under development, and just over 225 million in system-wide sales. And I think 14 or 15 brands under the portfolio at that point. So background, I came from the restaurant industry, put myself through college, through the industry, worked for a company called Jimmy John's, which everyone is very, very familiar with. Built that company from 30 restaurants to 300 and 700 sold by the time I left. And then became a franchisee, worked in every other aspect of two other brands afterwards, consulted for everybody in the industry. And for whatever backwards idea, I decided I was bored and I wanted to do Craveworthy. And now there's no boredom in my life.
Can you give us a couple of examples of brands within Craveworthy? Are that you all
Yep.
QSR, FSR?
So we are QSR, which we would call QSR plus, fast casual, and then full service. And our specialty is obviously QSR plus full service. QSR plus fast casual is where I think are the sweet spots of the restaurant industry, and where I think that industry is going to continue to develop and go due to the economics of the big boxes.
Mm. Well, let's start there, actually. You have so much industry context. I want to really talk about the fact that we're seeing such massive shifts in consumer behavior. Plus, there's new technologies that are emerging almost weekly. At every conference I'm at, I feel like I can't even take enough notes. Plus, changing workforce dynamics, increases in labor, in policy, changing generations. And the truth is that some restaurants are really thriving in this environment and others are really struggling to adapt. So just in the past year, we've seen a lot of restaurants start to experiment with AI-powered drive-throughs and kiosks and automated kitchen equipment, and there's just no shortage of innovation. But sometimes when we're moving this fast, it feels like we're focusing on too many things at once, and it's easy to miss the kind of fundamental, crucial things. So that's the where I want to start, which is listen, whether it's AI or not, what do you think is the restaurant industry's biggest blind spot right now?
Right now, I mean, the biggest brand spread in the industry is that we don't want to admit that our consumers are hurting. And because our consumers are hurting, we're all not feeling it. And we jacked our prices up to offset negative sales and everything else because our food and labor costs have gone up. We've sort of taken a blind eye to what the consumer feels. And we're now scrambling for AI and cost savings because the bells are starting to go off in our heads. Oh crap, we took too much price. How can I not take price anymore, but lower my margins and increase my margins everywhere else? So I think that's the biggest blind spot. Unfortunately, it was our own stupidity. We got very, very not greedy, but we got very, very over our skis and we took too much when we needed to and not, we never lowered it. So
Hmm.
I've been using the example in the grocery store industry. Milk goes up, milk goes down. When the cost of milk goes up, you pay a little bit more. When it drops, it goes down. But the consumer gets a relief. Restaurants, there's never that relief point on pricing. We take price, we never give it back. And unfortunately, with the state of our consumer, we needed to give some price back. So now that's where AI and all these tools that you just mentioned come into play. How
Hmm.
do I now not take any more price increase, but now increase my margins?
Yeah, so it's funny that you're talking about this. This has kind of been our thesis for a while, which is restaurants are going to hit this breaking point where they have to do more with less. Whether it's fewer, and at the time it was fewer people. Now we're not seeing the same staffing shortages in every area of the industry, but a lot of it is around budget and how do you actually maximize your team. I don't know if you feel the same way.
I mean, but it's still a labor shortage, just a different type. It's
Mm,
now the exact same thing that you couldn't staff before. Now you can't staff because you can't pay enough people to do the job because there's
true.
not enough margin in it. So it's the exact same issue, just in a different context.
Yeah.
And that's always been the restaurant industry's issue is you have two major things you control: cost of food, cost of labor. And if you can get those to be where they should be, which in most industries you want to target 55% for those. So you have a gross margin of about 45 or higher, 45 to 65 is where you want to be. If you can do that, then all of a sudden you don't have to worry. But now with rising labor, we've got to cut labor to get to that margin other ways. And that's the robotics that are going into the restaurants and AI and helping the managers get through other tasks faster. And I'll preach continually. That's great as long as hospitality doesn't suffer in the restaurant because people still come into the restaurants to have an experience. They don't come in just because it's quick and easy. They come in because they want something they can't get at home.
Mm. Well, I actually think that's a good transition because one of my questions to segue directly into AI is that, it's obviously a buzzword. We can't seem to go a day without talking about it. But I'm curious to hear about the human side at Craveworthy right now. When you think about your team from corporate to restaurant level, what's been the general sentiment around AI this past year? Good, bad, neutral? How are people really feeling about it?
I mean, it depends on which level you talk to. Um, there's some worries that it's going to replace them, especially in the advertising departments and stuff like that, because you can throw
Mm,
something in and get as good of work as what they've done or a plan by not knowing as much. So obviously AI is going to play huge savings on those type of departments. But in the industry, in the space, in the field, they're not very concerned about it. They want their lives easier. They know that not everybody can be replaced by a tool. They want to get better at their tool, and you're also not getting the education of the management before the staff because you don't have the cream of the crop to pick from, and you've got to move a hell of a lot faster because you've been short staffed or someone leaves for a quarter down the street and you got to get backfill. They need to get brought up to speed faster. Those people are a little bit more excited about using the tools because it helps them get up to speed faster. So, I mean, it's truly two completely different worlds.
hmm.
Even my financial team is starting to get a little worried because I can throw now an Excel spreadsheet and tell them to do the modeling for me and take it out, and you can get it to actually spit it out for you, which is amazing.
Yeah. I think I agree. I think there's a lot more on the kind of support side that's being automated and almost replacing, but I am seeing a lot of enhancement. And it's almost like a lot of the theory is it's not necessarily that we're going to shed headcount, but as we grow, we don't need to add headcount. But time will tell, I suppose. I think one thing I wanted to transition into is this concept of implementation. So, what was it, a year and a half ago, 18 months ago when OpenAI came out? Maybe it wasn't even a year at this point. I should have done my research before. But AI, even in the past year and a half, is increasingly embedded into tech rather than this standalone product. How is it being used at Craveworthy? Is it more on the embedded side? Or are you still kind of on the chat GPT, you just
I
said that
mean,
you inject your financial model into into something.
I'm using it more where I originally said I wouldn't ever use it because I wanted to touch and feel it, but I've come to the realization that I have to become really, really good at it so I can know how to use it for the rest of my company.
Mm,
So I'm using it more in everything that I do. So even putting customer reviews in, I have a bot set up that I throw every review in now and the synopsis so I can start seeing trends and this and that. And it's my brand identifier for the individual brand. So then I can develop a marketing plan off of it. I tell them to go pull the book from Budlong. Can you go and pull what are the key points and all this? And how do I drive sales for our number one item based on the data that was provided? It it's remarkable in the stuff that you can do. It's a time saver. It's a way for me to see stuff that I haven't always been able to see, but it's also now I know they can do work in half the time. So things that I used to go to my marketing team or even my ops team, hey, I need this or that. I know they're all throwing it into Chat GPT to spit it out. I can get more out of them quicker.
mm,
And so I think it's at this point still on the executive level and like the above, it's how you use it, where you use it. And everyone's getting good and trying to find the right path. I think in the training levels or customer service and stuff like that, the bots and communication tools and all that are extremely good. Now, the voice activated drive-throughs, I think, is a customer fail because
mm.
I think it takes hospitality out of it. Yes, it's fun, it's neat, it's cool. Your orders are probably a little bit more accurate, but you don't have that service. You don't have someone greeting you. You don't have someone, they're never going to be as friendly, and if you drive through to a Starbucks and you get that person that's overly bubbly and first thing in the morning and so happy to be there, no matter how tired you are and grouchy you are, it makes you feel good. It just does.
Yeah.
When you get the voice activated drive through, you don't ever feel that way. And I think those are the components that are still not quite there.
Are you seeing a big pickup on those though, despite the lack of hospitality?
So in the bigger PE group or PE groups that are out there, they're pushing for it because it's saving labor. In the groups that are still about hospitality and want to make their brand special, they're avoiding it at all costs. And I think that's going to be sort of the next couple years where you see people over push in the wrong places
Mm,
and when the consumer pushes back. And I mean, look at my parents' age, they want to talk to somebody.
yeah.
When you go in and you go to a kiosk, and there's some incredible companies out there that have Bite, for example, that you can go in and have an incredible order experience. But if my mom or dad have to go and do that, they're leaving, so because they want that interaction, they want out to be served. So I think there's a balance that's going to have to be found. And my way of not using it in the hospitality side is probably not right. And going all in on it is probably not right either. It's going to be
Right.
somewhere in between.
Well, and that brings me to the ops side of things. So you referenced training. Um, I'd love to hear a little bit more around how you're using it in the L&D space and what sort of enhancement you're seeing, or if there's any pushback that you're seeing.
In the training space, there's been absolutely none. And I'm going to plug you all on this is that the stuff that you guys have coming and have developed for Opus and allows us to get a manual out and a new LTO training up and running and a hell of a lot faster because of it is priceless. Those are the tools that are needed in the industry. And those are the things that I'm very, very excited about seeing. Um, I don't think there's any fear in using those. I don't think there's any fear in having an employee go through that type of training or, hey, something didn't work right. You didn't get this, but you're close, and not just getting a score, but going back and re-educating them on points. I think that's the future of how training and how it's used long term. People hate getting a score. You love it when you get 100% or an A, but when you're not quite there, they'd rather not know they're not quite there and automatically just go backwards and get retrained. And these are the things that AI is going to be allow us to do that we weren't able to do before.
Mm. It's interesting that you say that too, because I have noticed in kitchens a lot of frontline teams almost self-educating with ChatGPT. So even if those tools aren't available yet, that iterative process is so natural to how people want to be learning and absorbing information. But everything that we've done previously is the antithesis of that. It's like over gamification, over scoring, all of that, and then it becomes punitive almost as a result.
Yeah, and I mean, even when you're dealing with your franchisees, it's not you don't want to give a black and white score. You want to be their partner, you want to be their helper, you want to get them to be successful. And, the old days of just cracking a whip and saying, hey, you got to be this or you're out. It's not the world anymore. And
Mm,
AI is allowing us to tweak those models and that the way we talk and the way we operate and the way we get people to where we want to go without them knowing that's where we're taking them. And AI is going to allow us to do that a hell of a lot easier.
yeah. Um, well, let's talk about the other side of this, though. So I know from my perspective, um, I've seen and talked to the CEOs who are hesitant about AI, the legal teams who are hesitant, less so the tech teams. I think it's more on the legal side, um, specifically in larger organizations. But also, I'm starting to see it trickle down market to smaller restaurant groups that are planning to grow. So, can you talk a little bit about have you put any guardrails in place around AI? It sounds like you're encouraging your team to use it, so maybe not. But I'm speaking more around AI governance and data protection, which feels like we're
So,
entering that phase.
I mean, you got to pay for the better and more sophisticated. You can't just use ChatGPT on your own, and right now we're at fault. We still have individual accounts. As the cost and all that becomes more beneficial, you'll put the enterprise values in, and that will definitely happen. Um, it's legal's always going to find a reason to hate something, no matter what they do, and that's what they're there for. But they're overprotective on, hey, how do you get a mark, or how do you can't use the graphic that was just provided. And that's absolutely true. You can't use the graphic that is automatically provided unless you're doing a LinkedIn post or something that doesn't really matter. You've got to take that image or that idea and make it your own afterwards. You still have those people that need to do those things, but you can get an idea or a basis out of it.
Mm.
Legal, like everything new, is going to complain until they understand it.
Well, and there's different segments of AI. Like in L&D, there's the large side of it, which is data control, and I understand
Mhm.
that. But there's also just data processing and using it for using AI for inspo. If
Right.
your training leader is being tasked with a large initiative for a new group that you acquired, then sometimes saying, well, what's the best way to train, a QSR that has 3 people because it's a
Mhm.
small, quick operation, can just give people a jump start rather than being the end work product. So it
And
feels like there
that
needs to be a spectrum.
correct. And that's what I mean, you ask it for. I mean, I don't expect you to ever get 100% of what you're getting out of
Yeah.
there. If you take what's in there and make it and just put it out there, then you're going to get caught and someone's going to figure out what you're doing and just replace you. If you can't act to it. But I mean, I do think there's a lot of other benefits that you can go through and use and have those tools. I think the data protection obviously is going to be the biggest point. So I have a ad company that we're talking to that has this incredible new feature that takes your customer data and is able to place the people not in your loyalty database and go and market to those individual peoples off their email or phone number that you have. And then they're able to somehow find the credit card information for everybody in your loyalty database and not have it in there, and only market to the other ones so they can really tell you who is coming in off the ads that you're running that are new customers. That is unheard of before. But, and I'm all excited about it because it will actually show me a true spend and what it's costing me to get new customers to come in, or if I'm even acquiring new customers. They're doing that with AI. They built their systems and all that with that model, and it's because someone else has to go and value and, get that data to that point. That wasn't available to us before. You could only go one way. Now you get to really pigeon down into. And we're even going as far as that I'm taking a customer from the grocery stores that are in my areas. I'm targeting the grocery store customers, not other restaurants, as a test, because everybody goes to the grocery store, so, and everyone can have the customer. We've not marketed those people. We didn't know those people before. Now I'm going to go after those people that are not my customers that go to the grocery stores, and I'm going to target them with something special to see if they come in. It's mind blowing to me that we can do that now.
So how much of just kind of future outlook here, um, where are you placing your bets right now for Craveworthy? There's the consumer side, and then there's the employee side around, labor efficiency. Is it 50-50? Are you weighing it more on the marketing side?
So I think on the consumer side, I'm not taking a lot of gambles on AI yet. The stuff that we're doing is very table stakes. It's, the customer feedback, that type of stuff. That's as far as I want to go there. Everything else is on the back of the house, and I'll go all in as much as I possibly can to improve the life of my employees and give them a better environment to operate in. And our job is to make everyone's lives easier continually. And if that's using AI, if that's using an old-fashioned pen and paper, whatever is going to make their lives easier, that's your responsibility, because they're all fighting for less time because you're asking them to do more. Because we don't have the margins. And I just came back from China, and it was evident. I mean, I walked into these offices, and there was 75 to 100 people for 100 restaurants working in an office. I mean, doing
That's
bookkeeping and
unheard
everything
of.
else. And I'm like, I wish I could have that many bodies, but the cost is so different that they're able to do that where I have to do it with three.
Yeah.
And so it's not exactly apples to apples anymore on what you can compare. So you got to find ways to make those things easier to operate on less. You can't eliminate everything in the storefront. It's impossible. Or in a retail situation or in hospitals and all that, you still need those bodies, because you still need that interaction. You still need that. You can eliminate elsewhere and increase your margins by eliminating G&A expenses. That's where I think AI is going to be the most benefit. And then all tech. I think that's where tech in general is the biggest savings for us to win on. Is let's eliminate cost on G&A and not the frontline workers. The frontline workers are already taking a beating for what they need, and take everything else and make everyone else's lives. Instead, you don't have to add another $200,000 employee to operate X number of restaurants.
Right. So what you're saying is that's interesting. And I tend to agree. It's the when you say that the frontline employee is taking a beating, it's like we're already stretching folks pretty thin, but we also want to be great employers and create a better quality of life for people and career pathways and things like that. But if you don't have the right tooling, then it's moot. And so it sounds
Continue.
like the biggest opportunity is almost top down at this point.
I think so. Now, there'll be others out there that completely disagree, and they're the ones that don't work, I'll call them out. They don't work in their restaurants. They don't go in. They don't see the faces and the tired and how they've gotten beat up. But COVID was hard. The labor shortage was hard. The change in the customer appreciation for the people doing their job is night and day different. It's not what it used to be where you got a thank you. I mean, how often does a customer say thank you? And think about yourself or the people you're with when you get off a plane. Thank you to the flight attendants that, for the flight. Most people walk off grouchy and they don't say anything. That level of respect is not there anymore. And that hurts them. I mean, it's not right or wrong. It's just, It's the world today. And those are the people that are looking for other jobs all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, well, with that in mind, I want to wrap up our conversation. I can't believe it's already been almost a half hour. I want to look ahead a little bit and get your take, and then a quick lightning round so we can get to know Gregg better as a human, of some quick fire questions. But would love to hear from you, um, whether it's visionary and it doesn't exist yet, or whether it does exist but maybe it's out of reach. Which AI enhanced tech do you think is really going to be a must have for restaurants next year?
So tech wise, I'm gonna go after again, I always will speak to the people that I use, and I use them because I'm all in. So Opus is a must, Ovation is a must, Restaurant 365 are a must. Those are my three must-haves.
Mm,
I can't do anything that I want to do without having those three in place. Toast would be the second tier. That's my POS of choice. And then as far as AI and stuff like that, I haven't really settled on what an AI model should be. I mean, I used Gronk or whatever on X the other day, and I asked them to give me a Pixar character of myself, to just see how accurate it is of all the pictures of me and everything else. And the thing I got was nowhere close to me. It was like not even night and day. So it's not 100% yet that I can say anything's perfect. I use ChatGPT. It's always open in a window. I throw something in, I ask it a question. I sat next to a guy on a plane the other day, and he was typing in, "Give me the best travel itinerary for this, and this, and how," and
yeah,
go and research. And I'm looking, going, you just can't put in Google and type your flight, but it then spit out the entire list of where you should go and all these restaurant recommendations and all
right.
that.
Yeah.
I think the more we get comfortable with it, we don't know what we're going to use it for yet. Um, yeah, are there other ones? Yeah, I mean, there's other things that I like to have fun with that I'm playing with, and the graphic ones and stuff like that. The question I see is asking if you're asking about the advertising program yet, I'm not ready to say that yet because I haven't proven it out yet. And so once I get it proved out that I actually see positive results, then it will be everywhere that we post. But I don't want people to go and use it until I actually can tell you, yes, it did what it said it was going to do.
So, I want to get into our Q&A with the audience. For folks who are listening, feel free to post a question in the chat, or we'll have you go live in just a second. Before we do, I'm going to do our quick lightning round with Gregg, so we can even go in the non-AI direction. Gregg, you have 10 seconds to answer each of these questions. There are five, and they are whatever's top of mind for you. First question, what was your first job ever?
First job ever was working for my dad at Chris. Actually, I take that back. My first job was at Halloween haunted house. That was my first job. I
Great.
jumped out and scared the crap out of people at a mall that was by my house. That was my first job. Forgot about that one.
It sounds like what CEOs do every day too. So,
It was a blast.
um, describe your leadership style in 3 words.
Hmm. I don't know if I can. It would be trust, verify, teach.
Mm,
Um, would be the three that I would pick.
yeah, I'll take that answer. It's a great one. Um, what's the last book you read or podcast you listened to?
Last book I read, I just finished. I can't even think of the title now. Podcast would have been Brandon's Hospitality last week's.
Yep, that's a regular listen. Um, uh, what is the best career advice you ever received?
You're going to fail and you're going to fail hard, and that's okay. Um, and that doesn't mean that you give up or that you may be at the wrong spot, may have been the wrong time, but pick yourself back up and learn from it.
Mm,
And that was beaten into my head by two individuals, my dad and Jimmy. And it continues every day. Like I'm not afraid of failing because of it.
Hmm.
It's if you're going to go out on your own, you're going to start something or you're going to take a gamble, you're going to fail at times. It's okay. Mm,
Hmm.
and most people are too afraid to fail.
Words I think all of us need to continue to remind ourselves. Last question, and then we'll toss it over to listeners. What's another CEO or restaurant brand that inspires you?
So Jeff Alexander at Wow Bao is probably the biggest one. Um, the way that he has changed from a restaurant and pivoted his entire business to a CPG brand and built it when everyone else doubted that took a lot of courage. And then going in and ghost kitchens and everything else when they weren't even an option. That's definitely would be the person that I've seen take the biggest gamble. And then also the way he goes back and he gives back to the industry continually. He's welcoming, he's inclusive. He always is trying to get people to introduce each other and help them get to where they need to be, which is pretty remarkable in the world that we're in today, that people are still like that.
Hmm. It's a great example. And also a lesson in just, yeah, being bold and not being afraid to fail.
Without a doubt.
All right. So we are at that special time where you can ask a question to Gregg. We have one in the chat here already. Benzion, I hope I pronounced your name right. Gregg, what are your thoughts on individualized short or long-term development plans using AI rather than standardized AI-assisted or generated training modules?
So I think they're acceptable as a basic point and a start. But I think the individual creativity of what you're doing has to still come from that. You can put something in and get something as your guide map, but it has to be tweaked for the individual brands or task. And no AI is going to know or understand exactly that unless you go and spend all the time educating them on the brand. So that can be built into what you're trying to do. It will get there, but right now I think that would be, hey, use it as a starting point, but not just take it and run.
Yeah, I think we're starting to do that at Opus, where you can sort of train against the brand, because I agree, you can only get a certain level of accuracy. Um, any other
It
questions? Oh, yeah.
it misses the heart of a brand. So AI, no matter how good it is going to lack the compassion component of what you're trying to teach people. And the restaurant industry is about compassion. As much as people want to say it's black and white, it's this, but you're dealing with first time employees and everything else. They need that compassion and that leadership style where they actually feel appreciated. And AI, if it's all that way, you can't write that yet. It's not good enough to cover that.
Agree. It reminds me of I was overhearing a manager the other day, and she was saying she was coaching a greener manager on just the new hire experience, and basically telling that person, you can't expect a new hire to feel comfortable asking you questions. You need to create space for them to ask questions. This is a 16-year-old kid who's never worked here before. It's sort of the same concept where like you have to inject some sort of warmth and hospitality even into the training experience to make sure that people feel like they belong.
And that goes for leadership teams too. I mean, I had a meeting with my leadership team yesterday, and there was one or two people asking questions, and I laid out a bunch of things, our goals and all that, and they all were processing, but they were afraid to ask, a question at that point. Now I'll get questions after the fact, but it takes time for that trust to be built in, especially as you merge new companies and people aren't with you for a long time. They don't instantly come out of their shell.
Hmm.
So nothing changes. I mean, no matter how high up you go or everything out that, very few people go all out and will ask a question the first time you ask them to. You got to usually pull stuff out of people. And
Hmm.
that's the harder, that's why training and all that and having AI tools are great tools, but the personality and the personal connection through training allows you to be able to do those things.
Well, and it sort of leads to the fact that the whole concept around why blended learning is so important. There's no digital platform that's ever going to fully replace a trainer. You need that human there to help inject the brand's voice. So any other questions from the audience before we part ways with Gregg?
We do have one more, I see.
Sarah has a question. When you were looking at acquiring a brand, how are you evaluating its craveworthiness? Is that a term you use?
It actually is. So there's a story behind Craveworthy in the first place. So the name Craveworthy came, Jimmy was in my little closet office in my first, when I was an intern, and he wrote on a piece of paper and stuck it above my door, my food is craveable. And sort of said that was the focus, that's what we were and all that. So that's where the name came from. We wanted our food to have that craveability all the time. So I have used that now for the rest of my career and my life, that any brand that I look at or anything, I have to think the food is remarkable enough that I think about it after I eat it. So, and then I'm like, oh, I wish I had a little bit more. When can I get that again? Or something of that nature. There's a lot of food out there that you can eat and you walk away from and you don't think much of it. It just fills the need of you were eating. The brands that we bring in and the brands that we have to part of is afterwards you got to be like, wow, that was really, really special. And sometimes you can go too high on food quality and that the consumer doesn't resonate with it. And I've made mistakes by doing so. There's that balance of where you need to be. And my trip to China, I went and I tried a bunch of ramen and Chinese noodle shops, and there was this one on there that, and there'll be more on this later because I can assure you, but there was this one brand that for the rest of the day, all I could taste was their broth. Everywhere I went and everyone that I went back to, I went back to their broth. I still had that taste in my mouth. That's what I'm looking for, something of that nature.
Is there some sort of metaphor in there for that's how you hire leaders at Craveworthy as well?
I have been pretty good at the people that I brought in and the people that have been growing with us. And I truly think it's because you allow them to grow with you and you give them the rope that they need to do their jobs and you trust them fully. And people either step up to achieve that growth and get there with you and step up to the challenge and work at the pace that I work and everything else. And then there's other people that just can't cut it. And you remove them because it's not the environment they want to be in. They're more used to that big corporate culture.
Mm.
And nobody in a corporate culture is ever going to work with me because we don't work that way. We're hands-on, we get dirty, we're moving at a pace that is unheard of. So, but yeah, the leaders and the people on my team are absolutely amazing. And you guys work with Cassie all the time and you see exactly how amazing she is at what she does.
Yeah, it's true. And behind every great piece of software is a great person running it, and Cassie is incredible. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And runs a lot of brands, runs a lot of training for a lot of brands.
Which have you ever seen somebody do that before?
Not to that extent, no.
No, she's absolutely a rock star.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Thank you for having me. And if you have not signed up for Opus, I swear to you all, it is the best out there. And that's not a plug because I'm on this or anything of that nature. They truly this is the best training platform that's out there. You guys do amazing work. So keep it up.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it. Appreciate you. All right. See you later.